Hey everyone, when I'm considering an everyday camera, I want to make sure that it excels in at least three main things. Firstly, I want it to be able to shoot pretty decent, good quality images, and that's kind of a given. I also want to make sure that it fits in my pocket and is with me in any type of situation that I'm in. And lastly, I want to make sure that this camera gives me a sense of nostalgia and a genuine desire to want to use it. So in this video, I want to go over my favorite camera, the Olympus Mju 2, the 35 2.8 version, and I'm going to show you a few of the photo examples and why I keep this camera with me at all times wherever I go. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Sergio and I'm a commercial photographer here in Victoria, BC. And sometimes it's not about the big full frame DSLR cameras. Sometimes it's about making memories and looking back at them and feeling a sense of nostalgia when you're looking at your images. But that isn't to say that this camera itself doesn't have exceptional quality. I really do think that the 35 2.8 lens that's on this camera far outshines a lot of modern DSLRs, especially the point and shoot ones. The thing is with this camera is that it just nails the exposure. You just point it, you shoot it, it looks good. Point final. That's all it really is. But what's so great about this is that it just gives me that one or two shots every time I go out and use it. I like to use this camera as a party camera, as a memories camera, as a way to look back at a certain night or a certain event and just feel nostalgic about it. So what better than a camera that makes images look like what they looked like when I was growing up back in the 90s and 2000s. I think a camera like this is the peak of film photography, because film photography kind of stopped evolving 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cameras kind of stopped getting any better. So if you look at a film camera from early 2000s, you're going to get really, really good quality. You're going to get 100 years of innovation of camera technology, all in one tiny little handheld little piece of plastic. So don't think that just because this camera is 20 years old, the images are going to look like crap, because they were the best film shots you could get, especially out of a point and shoot at the time. This camera is tiny. Like, I would open it up, but there's a roll of film in here, but essentially that roll of film takes up the entirety of the camera. It's super small. It's really not much, especially when you compare it to a DSLR. But the thing is, it nails the exposure every time, all the time. In the middle of the night, in the middle of the day, in a dimly lit room, at a party, or wherever you are, this nails the exposure. It kind of baffles me, really. But it really does exceptional image quality all the time. I'm really blown away by these. Doesn't really matter what kind of film stock you put in it, it's going to nail it. You probably need to make sure that it's 400 ISO so that it gets the exposure right, but other than that, great camera. There's a lot of different versions of this camera with a lot of different lenses on it, but the 35 2.8 is the one that really outshines all of the other lenses. The reason for it is that it tends to favor shooting wide open as much as possible, and then it uses the flash to fill in those shadows. So it just creates a really beautiful modern day snapshot that we would be used to seeing today on Instagram or on all of our social media. So even when you look back at images from this, you're like, oh man, you would never know that it's from a 20-year-old point and shoot. But the reason I choose this over choosing something like a phone is because this camera only takes 36 shots or 24, depending on the film stock that you put in. So that means when I go out, I only have a few exposures of that night. It's not like on my phone, 36 shots on my phone, I could do that like right now. Like I take 36 shots of my dog every 5 minutes. With this, when you look back at an image from a night from 3 weeks ago, you don't even remember it, or you don't remember shooting it, and you only have the one single shot from that night, you're gonna cherish that one single shot. It doesn't matter if it's the most excellent, shallow depth of field, perfectly lit exposured shot. It's a memory. It's made to make you feel nostalgic. That's all it is. It's not about, like, having an everyday camera, at least for me, is not about making sure that every picture is the best picture I've ever taken. For me, having an everyday camera is looking back at memories from images from 2, 3, 4 months ago on a roll of film that I haven't developed yet and being like, oh my God, that was so much fun. That's great. I only need the one exposure to remind me of that. I don't need 46. It's fine. So I think having an everyday camera like this really kind of sets the tone for just reminding you of these little bits of your life that you might be glancing over. when we shoot stuff on our phone, we forget about it by the next day because it's so disposable. There's so many options. It's like, what's the difference between this one and this one and this one? Honestly, if you hadn't seen A or B, you wouldn't know how good or how bad C is. And I think when you look at your images as, 1 of 10, you're like, oh man, yeah, obviously this one's a bit better than this one's a bit better than that one. But when you only have 1 or 2 shots, it doesn't matter. They're the best ones you got. That's all that matters. Think of shooting with an Instax. You take the picture with the Instax, you get it out, you hold it physically in your hands, you're blown away. Doesn't matter that buddy's eyes are closed, that makes the shot. That's what happens when you only have 1 or 2 options. Those little mistakes, those little Bob Rosses, they make the image. They don't deter from or oh man, I wish I didn't have red eyes in this photo. No, that's what makes the photo super cool and different than the other ones because that's all you got anyway. I love this camera. I love what it makes me feel and how it gives me the ability to shoot images and look back at them in a way that no other camera makes me feel like that. I think having something like this, not specifically this camera exactly, but something like this that's reliable and that fits in your hand and that you can look back at is going to make you fall in love with photography. Especially if you're a working photographer like I am, if you're a commercial photographer, someone who works with cameras as tools and not just as toys, having a toy, having something that reminds you why you started shooting in the first place, sometimes is a pretty good option. And my option is this Olympus Stylus Mju 35-2.8. My advice to buying one of these, because the 35-2.8 specifically is a little bit in higher demand, my advice to buying these would not be getting it on eBay or on any kind of like marketplace that you find them, because those will be either curated or like the people who are selling that know what they're selling. But if you can find this on like Facebook Marketplace or a garage sale or someone's aunt's cousin's grandma that had one of these, try to get your hands on them that way, because you'll be able to find one for $50, $100, $200, rather than what you'll be able to find them now if you look on eBay for like 3, 4, 5. I don't even know how much they go for, but they just always keep going up in value. But I don't want to sell it. It's my favorite camera. It's my favorite everyday point and shoot. They're not going to get any better than this. I'm happy with what it gives me, and I'm going to keep it for as long as it wants to keep shooting. Yeah, let me know if you guys got an everyday camera, if you keep your DSLR around your neck all the time when you go out to school or when you go to work or when you do your events at night or when you just go out with your friends and you're holding 10 grand around your neck, or if you just have like a little cheap plasticky Olympus Mju 35-2.8. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Maybe leave a like on your way out and subscribe if you haven't. And I'll see you guys in a couple days. Later.